It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
Good evening, Chicago. This is your host, Jerry Vasilatos. Welcome to another Friday night edition of Chicago Corner. I am your host for the evening, compiling this week's news stories. Very, very, very slow week, but there were some stories of note that I thought were worth talking about tonight in conversation. I am, as always, joined by my co-host, Mr. Edward Heller.
Good evening, Chicago and everyone else around the world. Happy Pizza Friday, although...
Oh, save it for the end of the show.
I did not have pizza today.
Okay. Well, no, I didn't want you to spill what else today was.
Oh, well.
I have a special connection with that story that you shared with me.
That's true.
Okay, so let's save that. I didn't know if you were going to mention that or not. So,
well, I've already told people on Twitter because that's, I changed my dinner plans.
Yep, but we're saving it for the end so that we can also promote a special sponsor. So, anyway, let's see who's joined us in the live chat tonight. And unfortunately, for no explanation, my browser's misbehaving. And I don't know why. Am I freezing up on that side?
No, you're fine. We got Oreo's face in the camera. Everything looks good on my end.
So it must be something on my end. So I will just proceed and hope that we don't have too many interruptions based on my sensing something's wrong. Hey, you, get down. See, he's the active one.
Yeah. Well, I got you covered tonight, Jerry, if you need me to bring up any stories or anything.
Okay. So we got Kathy in the live chat. Welcome, Kathy. We got Art. We got, let's see who else has joined us this evening. I'm seeing 4 viewers on the StreamYard count. But that's all who've chimed in so far. So welcome, everybody. We hope to see even more of our regular viewers joining us and commenting throughout the evening. I have to sneeze. Excuse me.
Bless you.
So we are happy to be back. We took the night off Tuesday so we could go enjoy the public or the premiere screening of Slaughterhouse that was written by Ed's friend Bradley, and now I'm forgetting his last name. Brad Fowler. And was produced by him and his partner Katie Lanigan.
Yeah, Brad and Katie actually wrote the thing together. I think it was mainly Brad's thing, but then they also produced the movie, and it's one heck of a movie. If you didn't get a chance to see it, I'm hoping that it'll be available in a place near you. They had it was a nationwide opening on Wednesday evening in a whole bunch of theaters, and then Thursday I saw a bunch of other locations pop up where tickets were supposed to be available through the weekend, but some cities are either selling out or something hinky's going on with the ticketing systems through AMC or Fandango or any of those systems because of a recent thing where apparently Taylor Swift's most recent tour, which was amazingly successful, is now going to be in theaters. And so, needless to say, all the Swifties are jamming the internet trying to get tickets ahead of time for that.
Yep. Got nothing else to add. Go see Slaughterhouse this weekend if you can get online and get the tickets. It was a really good turnout. Yeah, great turnout. And I'm really wishing a lot of success to both Brad and Katie as the film rolls out in other cities nationwide. It's gotten some good reviews online, too. So let's go into our first story for the evening. And as I said, it did seem to be a bit of a slow news week. I was struggling to find stuff that was worth talking about on both Block Club, Tribune, Sun-Times. But as we go into Labor Day weekend, it seemed like, I guess thankfully there's not a whole lot of major controversies or scandals going on, despite what you see on social media with all of the contrarians continuing to try to like throw shit on Johnson. Now, you know, to his credit, we don't have all of the outrage we had during Lightfoot's administration, but to be fair, Ed and I were talking before the show, he's got to like step up and do a little bit more. He's got to be a little bit more active than just talking about what's going to be going on. And I thought that in this first story, it was kind of reflective of him finally, I don't know, putting his foot down to the federal authorities as far as the migrant crisis goes here in Chicago, because it's been a big point of defense for him. His critics here saying he's not doing anything. He's kowtowing to the migrants. He's ignoring the needs of citizens in all the other neighborhoods across the city. And we are known as a sanctuary city, and we can't turn our back on migrants that come here. But we also can't not prioritize people who already live here and other, especially our homeless population, that have far too long been abandoned and marginalized and not paid attention to. So I saw this reported originally on WBEZ, and then there was a alternate article on Sun-Times that I wanted to transition into regarding this. And let's bring that screen up, Ed.
Okay.
Yeah, the one you've got queued.
All right. Are you seeing it on your end?
No.
Oh, is everybody else seeing it?
I see it now.
I've got it up on mine.
There's a delay. I've got a browser bug. It's probably what's going on. So let me go into the article. This came from WBEZ, Hunter Klaus, in a roundup of other stories this week that he calls the rundown. Mayor Johnson's warning to Biden. And it goes into Mayor Johnson warns Chicago may reach a point where it can no longer safely support migrants. Facing a migrant housing crisis that is expected to intensify, Mayor Brandon Johnson this week gave his most dire warning yet to President Joe Biden's administration. And he said, let me state this clearly, the city of Chicago cannot go on welcoming new arrivals safely and capably without significant support and immigration policy changes, the mayor said at a press conference on Wednesday, as reported by the Tribune. Both Johnson and Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday stepped up pressure on the federal government to do more about the growing crisis. They are urging the Biden administration to fast-track work permits for migrants, a process that can take at least a half a year. There is a White House concern. Now, this is interesting. Maybe this is what's going to light a fire under Biden's ass and the rest of his administration. Quote, there's a White House concern that if Biden does anything good for migrants who have made their way here, it may encourage more to just show up at the border, they write. Republicans are making immigration a major issue heading into the 2024 elections. And we've seen that happening a lot on social media. So unless Biden, you know what, Ed, it's not even Biden. It's whoever his handlers are behind the scenes. Unless they do something, this could be a major liability and I think a way for Republicans to score points as we go into the 2024 election.
Yeah, sadly, they basically go for the xenophobic dog whistles when they have situations like this, and it's sad because this is a nation of immigrants. I mean, growing up, we were all told it's a big melting pot here in the United States. You know, everybody comes from everywhere, and like we're one big conglomerate of a melting pot family, and we're supposed to all get along. Now, uh, we have limitations of resources, whether they be manufactured or real, depending on where you are and what your state is up to, and whether the federal government's giving you or your local government aid. But we need to focus on the things that can help all of us.
Well, one of the points here too with the work permits, with all of the issues we have in Chicago and all of the people complaining we're giving so much to migrants, getting them work permits to help with a lot of the sorely needed work that's got to be done throughout the city. And I'm not talking shitty jobs. I'm talking about infrastructure. You've probably got a lot of skilled laborers. You've got a lot of people who've come across the border that can probably contribute in many good ways to the city, earn their way, as we claim that we want to see everybody do. Plus, interesting too that with a lot of these infrastructural needs that we have, that not more is being done to, I guess, open up those jobs to other people that also need that work. But given that there's I think a real what's the word, rush of qualified workers here, and this also relates to what we talked about last Friday with Catholic Charities trying to find housing for migrants. There's only so much money that Catholic Charities and some of the money that's going into that program is going to pay to house migrants outside of shelters. After 6 months, they've got to figure out how to pay rents or find another place to live. So they're going to need jobs to do that. So let's get into the Sun-Times article regarding the work permits for migrants to start, I guess, providing a little bit more support beyond the funds that are going towards finding them housing. Although we've also reported in the past that there seems to be a lot of unspent federal funds that have been poured into Chicago, that you and I were wondering what's the holdup with where these funds are going. Whether it's towards housing or other support services, not just for migrants, but for everybody. Before I go into the Sun-Times article, Art shares, if I could bring his comment up, this is actually the start of something bigger. The migrants, asylum seekers will be forced to stay and meld up. I know, but my screen is like opaque. I can't read it while I'm showing it, and I'm not seeing it.
And
you want to read it for us, please?
And meld up with the homeless in the cities.
After weeks of not having
yeah, it's kind of weird. Let me start from the beginning.
Go ahead.
It says, this is actually the start of something bigger. The migrants, asylum seekers will be forced to just stay and meld up with the homeless in the cities they are in, creating a homeless epidemic in the United States. Well, we've already got a homeless epidemic in the United States. This is just going to make it bigger.
Right. I see what's happening. My archive PH is caching the Sun-Times story, and I bet it's because there are ads that it's bringing through the link I fed it. So anyway, this comes from Mitchell Armentrout and Lynn Sweet over at Chicago Sun-Times. Chicago Democrats are pushing Biden to speed up work permits for migrants. Will they succeed? Top Illinois Democrats are pushing the Biden White House on the issue, saying the move would also address labor shortages in the state and elsewhere. But the effort is complicated and nuanced. So let's see what's taken so long, or why it's taken so long. Governor J.B. Pritzker, Mayor Brandon Johnson, and other Democratic leaders on Wednesday renewed their call for President Joe Biden to remedy one crisis, the labor shortage in the hospitality and other industries, by tapping potential from another non-citizens, including the thousands of undocumented asylum seekers arriving in Chicago by the busload almost daily now from Texas. I guess Abbott is like sending them daily. But in this first paragraph, Ed, the labor shortage in the hospitality. Why do we have a labor shortage in the hospitality and under other industries here in Chicago, do you think?
Because those industries pay shit wages.
Bingo.
Oh, should I not have said that out loud, Jerry?
I'm glad you did say it out loud, because that's exactly the problem. They don't want to pay a fair living wage to Americans. And this goes back to what we've talked about in the past with the reason so many migrants come to this country and get jobs. They're usually getting the jobs most other Americans don't want because they're not getting paid a fair wage to begin with for the amount of work they're doing. So how do you turn the lemon into a lemonade here? If there are jobs that industry does not want to pay citizens a fair living wage for, which is kind of shameful to begin with, the very least, get the work permits forward so that you can have migrants earning a living to go towards, I guess, for lack of a better word or phrase, their food and board to support themselves here. Alongside business leaders, and I don't think that migrants should be making less for the same hard work, but if there's going to be some kind of a trade-off, I guess you're going to have to look at it that way. Alongside business leaders from several sectors, including the restaurant and construction industries, Pritzker, Johnson, and a handful of members of the Illinois congressional delegation, all Democrats, held a news conference urging Biden to streamline the process for new arrivals to obtain work permits. The agenda pushed by the American Business Immigration Coalition would create a pathway for asylum seekers, including more than 13,000 who have arrived in Chicago over the last year, with more than 1,800 of them sleeping on the floors of police stations and airports this week, to get to work in about a month. The backlog of applications has many new arrivals waiting 6 months or more to take a job legally.
Oh, looks like we lost Jerry's connection, but we'll get back to him shortly. But I'll try to pick up where he left off in the article here. If after these many months asylum seekers still are not being given permission by the federal government to support themselves with the plethora of available jobs, well, frankly, this moves from a short-term humanitarian mission to a long-term crisis, the governor said. Pritzker and other top Democrats were measured in their criticism of Biden, who figures to be hammered by Republicans on immigration no matter what he does heading into a re-election campaign. And the article goes on to say there are some things to know. When it comes to work permits, not all migrants are treated the same. An application for a work permit cannot be made unless the person has an immigration status allowing work in the United States. Many of the migrants in Chicago are asylum seekers and people who hold what is known as temporary protected status, or TPS. People with that status are automatically eligible to apply for a work permit. An asylum seeker from a non-TPS country will need additional months, maybe a year or more. A new arrival not seeking some approved immigration status cannot apply for a work permit. Okay, so that kind of explains why they're trying to speed up the process, because there's a whole lot of like waiting and different types of red tape and hurdles for that kind of thing. I see Jerry is trying to rejoin our stream connection here, but it looks like he's gonna. If I had to guess, it's probably Oreo trying to troubleshoot the problem right now. And Jerry is going, dude, get out of the way. I know how to do this. And then Oreo's like, dude, I'm a stream cat. Just trust the process. Okay, sorry, I'm just being silly for a minute. In general, TPS is granted by the Department of Homeland Security to eligible people fleeing their home country who cannot safely return. The current TPS countries are Afghanistan, Burma, also known as Myanmar, Cameroon, El Salvador, Ethiopia, Haiti, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, Somalia, South Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, Venezuela, and Yemen. Now, there's clearly a lot of countries missing from that list, and there's any number of political reasons why that probably is. But I imagine that those will be updated soon. I mean, we probably have migrants coming from other countries not on that list that they deserve to be able to, to make ends meet. Once, if the look, if they're granted asylum and but they're told they have to be able to, pay for rent somewhere, they have to be able to work. So it's not right to try put them in a situation on a untenable situation. That's the word. Arturo says, I don't believe anyone is earning a living wage. Yeah, there aren't a lot of people earning a living wage right now, but I think I talked about it last week, in that we really should have like the floor, our floor for minimum wage should be somewhere between $25 and $30 an hour. And a lot of people are shaking their heads at that, not realizing that there really hasn't been a raise in the minimum wage, and it hasn't kept up with inflation and the cost of living in more than 20 years. I would say more than 30 years. And it's a lot of businesses taking advantage of those low wages that are, that maybe that help them in the short term, but when they are finally struggling to find people to work in their industries and realize that people had a little time to think about the value of their labor when those lockdowns happened, it it changes the game a little bit. People are like, look, man, I got to put a roof over my head. Groceries cost an arm and a leg, and gasoline costs the other leg and the other arm. And then how am I supposed to drive with no arms and no legs? I don't know. Do you? So I'm just going to take a break really quick from this story while we wait to see what happened to Jerry. Let's see if he texted me. No, he hasn't texted me yet. So we're hoping he'll be rejoining us on this evening's program. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. I see Willie Bragg is joining us in the live chat. Welcome, Willie. Good to see you. And if you'd like to support this channel, we really appreciate everyone who supports us. You can head to patreon.com/Chicago Corner. And if you support us for $5 a month or more, you have the wonderful opportunity, if you want, to come on our program and be a guest. So that's pretty cool. So thank you very much to everyone who is a Patreon supporter. And please, if you haven't already, hit the like button on this video, share it to as many social media platforms as you have to let people know that we exist. Subscribe to the channel. We do a lot of our chatting on the YouTube live chat, but we also keep an eye on the chat in Rockfin. And some of the chats from the other platforms do come through to our StreamYard studio. We don't always see who is talking to us from the other platforms. Like, for example, I think Facebook just tells us it's a Facebook user. So we don't really know. If you're watching us on Facebook, hello. But you may want to tell us your first name when you leave a comment so that we know who's talking to us, because in the StreamYard thing, we really can't tell. Otherwise, we're happy you're joining us from any of the platforms, watching us on YouTube or Rockfin or Facebook or Twitter. And I think Jerry's LinkedIn page also has a streaming live. And also, we are also streaming live through our website, chicagocornertv.com. So if you can't find us anywhere else, look for us there. We have a few other things on that website as well, including links to our merch store, links for different types of, well, all kinds of useful links on the website there, and links to all the different platforms that we stream on. So head over there, pick up your Brandon Bingo card and play along. You'll load a Brandon Bingo card onto a web page, and then you can check the boxes when Brandon Johnson does something that's on the bingo card. So back to, well, let's take a look in the chat and see who's in there. Oh, Extra Bulla, Uncle Warren, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I am highly skeptical that Jerry is over all the way over in New York doing the things you are claiming he's doing right now. But I am told that portals exist. So someone's got that technology. Please hook me up. I would really love to see how portals work. Yes, Uncle Warren is watching us through the Green Giant French Cut Beans website. That must be a bootleg feed, but I am happy that people are able to tune in wherever they can watch us. So where did we leave off? Well, we were talking about Brandon Johnson and his efforts to get help for the migrant crisis that we're having in this city. So we started off in a Block Club Chicago article, and now we're in the middle of a Sun Times article where they're talking about getting work permits for some migrants so they can start working. And it looks like Jerry's trying to rejoin, but until he's back, I'll try and see if we can get through a little more of this article. The question in the article says, why the focus on work permits? The focus is on work permits for two reasons. First, there is a labor shortage, as noted by business leaders at the news conference, and also as noted by us in Chicago Corner, where we talked about why there's a labor shortage, because most likely they pay shit wages. That's my phrase. That's not from the article. Okay, back to the article. There's also tremendous pressure in Chicago to house new migrants in temporary shelters. If people can work, they will have the money to find other housing. Sure, I mean, we are still operating off of this weird notion that everybody has to be able to afford to put a roof over their head instead of getting the roof over their heads first. And that, you know, why should it be such a huge expense for everybody to do that? And why isn't the federal government stepping up and helping us out with that? Well, we know why. Because all their buddies work in Delaware, where all the banks are. Okay. What's next in that article? Stand by. We're switching photos. The timetable. Federal law requires migrants to wait at least 150 days after applying for asylum to then apply for a work permit, which can't get authorized for another 30 days. Now that's pretty ridiculous. Talk about red tape and making it absolutely difficult as hell to get anything done. This is the standard operating procedure for governments these days, especially federal government. They come up with some program where they say, we're going to give you all this help, or we're going to set up a mechanism for people to, you know, for example, migrants to get work permits. And then like, oh, that's great. Oh, by the way, you have to wait 150 days. Why? Oh, no reason. We just picked that number. And then, you know, after the 150 days, that's when you apply for the permit, which takes another 30 days. Why? The cruelty is the point. That's why. Due to the sheer volume of new arrivals, a process that takes at least 6 months has left many waiting a full year before they can get to work, according to Air Rendon of the Resurrection Project, a nonprofit that helps new arrivals navigate the system. The coalition's proposal would shorten the wait to about a month. We can actually make it faster, and they've done it in the past, said Rendon, pointing to the process for deferred action for childhood arrivals recipients whose work permit turnaround time is only a few weeks. Shouldn't take more than a month. New arrivals versus people working without papers for years is the title of this next paragraph. Hold on a second. I got a thing in my phone. Okay. You can stand by for just one moment, please. I'm going to see if I... hold on. I got to get to the fun part of the setup on this system here. So... I'll be right back. I was digging the music there, and then I was like, oh, wait, there's a live stream going on. I should probably come back on. So Jerry's working on, battling demons and stuff. He will be rejoining us as soon as he is able. We're in the middle of talking about Brandon Johnson and his effort to get work permits for the migrants as they keep shipping them here to Chicago. And I think generally I'm like, they should let them work if they're willing to work. You always get this weird xenophobic dog whistle that comes out where it's like, well, they don't want the migrants taking their gerbs. But at the same time, then, they make all kinds of excuses for, well, they're just going to come here and not work. I'm like, dude, pick one. You can't be of both minds here. You either want them to help out with what clearly is, a problem with employment deficits in certain industries, or you don't. And so if you're worried about them taking your job, I don't know what to tell you, because it's, everybody was an immigrant at one point, except for, the Native Americans who live here. So let's get back into the story here. New arrivals versus people working without papers for years. Oh, we got a quote from Chewy Garcia here. A major political complication when it comes to work permits has to do with equity. Representative Jesus Chuy Garcia put together a July 21st letter to Biden urging the president to speed up work permits for recent migrants and also for, quote, those who have resided in the U.S. for decades. Jerry does a better Chewy accent impression than I do. A sweeping move on work permits complicates matters because it sparks more GOP opposition. Well, you know, we could get into the duopoly kayfabe for a second here. For those of you unaware, Money Blue and Money Red are in cahoots. When I say in cahoots, I mean they're working together. And they work together the way you got the good guys and bad guys in the wrestling shows, or the way you got the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals in that basketball thing. It's you know, you got one group is pretending that they want to do good for you, and the other group is just pretending they don't want anything good for you, and they want to be selfish and jerky and bad. And so currently, most of the time, that's on the GOP. It's not all the time that they're the jerky and bad ones, and it depends on the subject. But both parties are working together. They're both pro-war. They're both imperialist. They're both heavily capitalist and very, very stuck in the bootstrap brain mentality. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps, even if you don't have boots. So what we should do is push back on those arguments. Everybody deserves a living wage. Everybody deserves a roof over their head. Everybody should have health care. And it shouldn't be one of those things where if you can't afford it, you can't have it kind of situations. But, you know, that's just my opinion. I know everybody doesn't feel that way. But let's talk about work permits a little more. Chicago folks living and working in the shadows for years by now have friends and relatives who can vote and may not think it's fair to give priority to the new arrivals. See, again, they're trying to divide all the people in need and not realizing that there's tons of resources and the federal government has endless amounts of money that they could spend on those resources for everyone, and they're choosing not to do it because they want us splintered. They want us fighting each other. They want us complaining about the other unfortunate group of people that you aren't. And we're stuck in a nation that requires you to pay for a lot of stuff. So people need work permits. So let's do what we can to help them, but let's also do what we can to help everyone else. And it's not terrible to point out that everyone else needs help too. It's just we shouldn't be doing one versus the other kind of a thing. It shouldn't be, well, why aren't you helping these people if you're helping these people? It should be, yes, we should be helping all of these people. So the agenda push Wednesday would speed up the process for all eligible undocumented people. The title says, difficult issue for Biden White House. Speeding up work permits is a tough issue for Biden. There is a White House concern that if Biden does anything good for migrants who have made their way here, it may encourage more just to show up at the border. Again, melting pot. You know, it's terrible that we live in a nation where people are just reversing, or what would you call this? Devolving back to these old tropes from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. but it's just red meat for the masses that are inside the bubble. Hopefully you guys will be able to break out if you haven't yet, and I'm hoping to be part of the information that helps you get there. But until then, let's see if we can get through this article because it's taking way too long. Biden Democrats pressuring Biden White House. State and local Democrats have been pressuring the Biden administration for months to speed up work permits. Pritzker dismissed the notion that immigration was dividing the president's party. As Democrats, we want to get to a solution. So does the president, by the way, Pritzker says. Yeah, I'm not so sure about Melty Joe there, JB. But what do you do? Ooh, he's back. Let's see. I'm gonna move my video down so we get Jerry at the top of the screen here.
Do you see that?
Did Oreo just move your?
No, he did nothing. Suddenly, my Chrome browser saying my browser can't access my devices. Too hard reset. Look, you know what? At this point, I have no more fucks left to give. I'm so fucking tired of technical issues that constantly interfere with us being able to produce the show properly because I don't know. So I appreciate you holding down the fort. Where are we in this article? I'm logging in from my phone.
I went off on a couple tangents, but I've been trying to get through the Sun-Times article. We went through a couple of the paragraphs already. The Biden Democrats are pressuring Biden White House, and the Chicago and New York Democrats are divided on tactics, and the White House is trying to speed up the work permits. But it's like, I think what it is, Jerry, is that it's like you have different factions of the Democrats are battling each other because a lot of them really just don't want to give work permits to migrants because they're secretly the same Republicans because it's a duopoly kayfabe.
Yeah.
And they don't want to create red meat and dog whistles for the Republicans to campaign on. But at some point, they're going to have to come up with some kind of solution because they either want, if they're going to be welcoming of migrants in the cities, these migrants are going to need to be able to work.
I am totally thrown off, even being able to keep up with everything you just said, which made sense, and I appreciate it. I'm just like, I'm so derailed from like what the story was talking about. Let's just move. And I appreciate you covering it that way. Mm-hmm. Open up Jamal Green's tweet. Let's just get the fuck out.
Yeah, we're done talking about this. Basically, they've said all they're going to say about this. It's like they're either going to get them permits or they're not at this point. But I'm told this guy was a candidate for mayor.
He was, and he went onto Twitter, and so this is kind of the flip side of why everybody's, flipping out on migrants, and rightfully so. This video was shared, and why don't you play it, Ed, so we can see what happened that this former candidate for mayor was sharing, and his concerns for dealing with the migrant crisis.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what I'm seeing here.
Well, it looks like it's some kind of a scuffle. I mean, I don't see like seriously violent activity. It looks like people yelling at each other, but the candidate shares downtown right now in Chicago. I'm guessing he took this video because it looks like it's from his camera, and he's saying downtown right now in Chicago, and it seems to be a first-person account. The quote-unquote migrants were stealing out of 7-Eleven, and when the black staff tried to help them,
tried to stop them,
and others jumped in. Taxpayers were forced to spend $400 million so far to deal with this crisis. We need a real plan. It's ridiculous at this point, which led to some commentary in the thread. Dude, you ran for mayor. What's your plan? Saying we need a plan is what the rest of us are doing, but getting a plan and people on board is what a mayor would do. So saying getting a plan is basically as worthless as thoughts and prayers. Let's see it.
Yeah, MV Chicago's absolutely correct there.
Yeah. And to which the candidate responded, I quote unquote ran for mayor. I have a plan, but I didn't get elected, and I haven't been asked for my plan. Therefore, I'm requesting the current administration puts one together.
Hey,
and
Jerry,
this reflects everything that was wrong that we saw at the end of his campaign.
Yeah.
I
think it's.
Can I get a word in since I've been?
Go ahead.
Okay. So Lori Lightfoot didn't call him. This is all about his ego and his hubris, right? Unless you reach out to him, he's not going to step forward because he's the golden candidate who knows all. So I guess the reason I wanted to share his perspective here, his point of view, is that everyone's calling him out on this because they finally see how wrong I was, and a lot of people weren't supporting him. Thomas Salomis says, laugh out loud. What a joke, like a scorned fourth grader. You didn't elect me, so I'm not going to try to help. He responds, you want me to go out there and force the mayor to accept my plan and ideology? Beat it. He was elected, therefore people trusted his leadership at this time. Do you hear how hollow this is? If this candidate had a plan or had a solution, if I were this candidate, I'd be like, Mayor Johnson, I see what's going on here. Might I suggest, here's how I think might be a worthwhile resolution or a worthwhile plan of action to explore. Let people hear it, debate it, discuss it, and decide if the mayor pays attention to it. This guy won't even put it out there. I said it last election, and I'll say it again. I believe his future in politics here in Chicago is done with. It's over.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a little hypocritical to have a platform you're running on, and then as soon as you're not going to be able to run it like under your mayoralship, all of a sudden all that platform is nothing anymore. He doesn't want to do it anymore. He's not going to talk to anyone about doing any of that stuff. He's not going to talk to the mayor or anyone else about trying to implement some of those policies. So was he ever serious about them?
I think he was serious about being crowned mayor is what he was serious about. Crowned. He says, laugh out loud. You want me to go out there and force the mayor to accept my plan?
Force.
So someone responded, how about you act like a good Christian and establish or contribute to an NGO that you trust to help instead of playing politics? You always talk about your success. Let's see it. Now, here's another person but here's the other thing, Ed. He selectively took this video that throws the red meat out to all the anti-migrant sentiment. I'm sure the migrants aren't perfect, but there's been a lot of tension on the south and west sides, which is predominantly African-American neighborhoods. As we've said, look, it's the most segregated city in the nation. And it's not right that so many migrants have been placed in those communities. They should be placed equally around the city. But the fact that they were kind of shoved into those communities, I understand why people in those communities are pissed off, because they've been, asking and requesting for so much other type of help in the past that they didn't get. And now the priority is the migrants. But the fact he takes the video and starts throwing out the red meat to help serve that narrative is a little bit concerning and alarming to me. Someone else says, I was amazed by the migrants downtown Saturday night being entrepreneurial, selling candy, bottled water, beer, and wine on street corners, which had me wondering how they scored a city liquor license so quickly. I doubt they scored a city liquor license, but they're doing everything they can to survive in light of the fact that nobody has a plan. And if I will state his name, Mr. Green has a plan, I would say share it on your social media instead of hoarding it to yourself if you actually think you have a good idea, because you're clearly not helping solve the problem. You're just throwing red meat to everybody who wants to be anti-migrant here. And again, this video, I see a lot of people arguing. I don't see people stealing from the 7-Eleven. I'm not going to doubt. I'm not going to assume he's making that up. But
but just the fact that he's showing a video that doesn't seem to support the context that he's narrating.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking through the Twitter feed one more time just to see if there are any worthwhile comments. Doesn't seem there are, so we can move on. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, by the way, I cannot apologize enough I don't understand why I have technical issues that interrupt this show. And every time it happens, I really try to get back on track and get my mind into a place where it's like I can continue without my frustrations. So bear with me. I think we're kind of back on track now that we're past that first story that got derailed by some of the stuff I wanted to talk about, but the tech issues interrupted. So let's move into our next story. This was a really weird story because there were, again, people on social media that seized upon it, interestingly enough, as a way to I don't know, start disparaging teachers in the city of Chicago because one of the victims here, I guess, was a CTU employee. But let's set this up by going into the article as it was reported on August 26th at Block Club Chicago by the staff. Two women, well, not allegedly, but they don't know who shot them, but 2 women were shot during the White Sox game at Guaranteed. 2 women were shot during the White Sox game at Sox Park. Post-game concert was canceled. The game continued following the 7:30 p.m. shooting in left field section 161 that wounded a 42-year-old woman and a 26-year-old woman, police said. The 2 women were shot while sitting in the outfield seats at Sox Park during Friday night's White Sox game, police said. The older woman was hit in the leg and taken to University of Chicago Medical Center, where she was listed in fair condition. The younger woman suffered a grazed wound to her abdomen and declined medical attention, police said. It is unclear to investigators if the shots were fired from inside or from outside the ballpark, the White Sox said in a statement. While police continue to investigate, White Sox security confirms that this incident did not involve an altercation of any kind. The game continued with the Sox. Okay, I'm not worried about the game details. The Chicago Tribune, citing a police report, said Chief of Patrol Brian McDermott asked the Sox to stop the game for public safety reasons at 8:12 p.m. The game continued, however, until it ended around 9 p.m. So without any understanding of how these women were shot, if it didn't happen in the park, you automatically think, is there some sniper across the way, or from another vantage point shooting into the crowd, or maybe even if it was within the park, someone would have seen somebody shooting in that direction where it hit these women. The Tribune said one woman was shot twice in her right upper thigh and calf and a bullet lodged in her shin. The second woman found a bullet lodged in her sweatshirt, which was tied around her waist, the Tribune reported, citing the police report. The post-game concert featuring Vanilla Ice, Rob Bass, and Tone Loc was canceled because of technical issues. The team told fans in the center field video board. Video released by the White Sox shows a post-shooting commotion near the aisle of section 161, about halfway up the left field bleachers. Several people can be seen flagging down security. Now, I'm going to jump into the follow-up story to this. That was as the story was first reported.
Yeah.
Now, the update, which came on that story I just read, was from the 26th. Were we at the movie that night, or did this happen the day before?
The 20th. I think that we were at the movie on the 22nd.
No, we were only there 3 days ago.
Or the 28th.
Okay.
29th, sorry.
Okay, so this happened over the weekend, and we couldn't report on it Tuesday because we weren't here. Now, the follow-up article by Block Club, the woman shot at the White Sox game says she didn't sneak into the ballpark. A lot of people are speculating the woman who was shot had snuck a gun into the park and accidentally shot herself and her companion. But there was no weapon recovered. And I would imagine if that was the case, even if they dropped the weapon, you would imagine the police would be very quick to recover something if it was dropped there, right?
Well, and don't they have metal detectors at all these stadiums now? Wouldn't that have gone off?
Do they? Maybe they do. I don't know.
I know they do at Wrigley. I'm sure they got to have metal detectors at Sox Park.
Okay. Well, I'll take your let's assume that they do. But if they don't, there was still no weapon recovered inside the park. Yeah. So a lawyer for the 42-year-old woman said his client denies bringing a firearm into the stadium and that evidence rules out the possibility her wounds were self-inflicted, as a lot of people have been speculating.
Yeah, actually, a reporter had speculated as well.
Is that how it started?
I think so. I can't remember who it was. But they were saying how they thought that maybe she had snuck the gun in under her fat roll or something and that maybe it accidentally went off, and that's why she was injured there. But like,
Her
then
fat woman. Oh, nice.
then the police came out like immediately and said, yeah, no.
Well, you know who jumped into that conspiracy theory, Ed, don't you? Our nemesis on Twitter, the Chicago Contrarian. Can you bring up that Twitter link?
Yeah.
I want to pop that up. I mean, it's kind of an aside to all this. We'll get back into the details and the updates, but I had some fun, as I always do, trolling him.
Hold on a second.
Because the fact that this woman was in the employee of CPS automatically got everybody jumping on this. That I'm sorry, not police department. Chicago. She's a Chicago teacher. She works for Chicago school.
This
system.
one, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm trying to bring it up here so I can read what he said.
It's you can read it. Chicago Contrarians. This was from the 29th. It says, "Is Stacey Davis Gates available for comment?" And it has a screenshot of some text that says, "Now we are learning a Chicago public school teacher is at the center of the investigation."
She's not. She's not at the center.
Yeah.
But notice how if it involves a teacher, everybody on there that hates the teachers and hates Brandon Johnson, that's where they go. So I decided to toss in there, hey, Chicago Contrarian, are you available for comment on the story we reported about the alleged Chicago Police Department child predator that was assigned to high schools that was assaulting students? Yeah, I regularly tag this asshole on police scandals.
I'm not seeing any replies there, Jerry. Very, very crickets on this.
Never. Not just this one. But, this is me having some fun at his expense or her expense or whoever the Chicago Contrarian is, because their Twitter feed is just all about how can we disparage, embarrass Johnson, and by association, Chicago Teachers Union. Now, in the follow-up article that I was sharing a moment ago before I wanted to shine some light on how people are using this on social media, because she was a teacher, teachers are bringing firearms into the park, and by association, because Brandon Johnson was a teacher and Stacey Gates is a member of the teachers union, why isn't anybody commenting? It's like, it's absolutely irrelevant.
Yeah, but clearly, I mean, all these people, it's actually, I think it's a team, that Chicago Contrarian. They like have a website, and they like have a whole team of cretins that are doing this kind of thing. I don't know which one of them specifically is running their Twitter account or social media, but it's amazing to me that it's like they got this like little conspiracy wall with the cork board and the pins and everything and the pictures and stuff. And so like they'll have Brandon Johnson up in one corner, and then she'll have Stacey Davis Gates in another corner, and all the other people that they hate, and they'll be tying little strings between the different push pins and stuff to link different news stories that may have very little to do, if at all, with any of these people. And he'll have
Stacey. They probably have Stacey Gates and Brandon Johnson with a string connected to this woman carrying a gun into the park, so that she could shoot herself and her companion accidentally.
Yeah. My theory. Anyway, can I give my theory on this bullet thing? It's like it feels like it. I know we don't always want to go down the magic bullet theory kind of road, but this could be very much physics involved, where some guy outside the ballpark shot his gun at a specific angle, and that parabolic motion of a bullet as it accelerates upward and then arcs and then goes back downward, and then and then hits this one woman in the leg and another woman in her waist area. And but it's not unlikely.
Here's my question to that theory, though. Would a bullet that's shot and is deaccelerating as it's falling cause the same kind of injury that both women suffered? Because it seems like one of them actually, I mean, if something falls from the air, it's kind of different. Well, I guess depending on, let me finish my depending on how high it is, you've got the acceleration of the weight of something coming down, but it's not the same as like you're standing in front of me and I'm firing a bullet and it's got the acceleration from the gunpowder going into, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is, one, nobody heard the shots because it was probably shot outside the ballpark.
But it's
And
also
then,
loud in a stadium, Ed. I mean,
okay,
you've got
that's the other thing. You're right, absolutely. And then also, it's the actual speed of a bullet coming out of the chamber of a gun is going to be much faster than the actual acceleration of a bullet from gravity, probably.
Right.
But you still have that original acceleration plus, and even if it slows down as it hits, its highest point and then starts basically going, downward, it's still moving at a decent pace, but then also being slowly accelerated at 9.8 meters per second squared, if I remember my science correctly.
No offense, the update kind of contradicts that theory because they're describing her injuries as gunshot wounds, which would tend to suggest something, let me get into the article so we can get the details. The 42-year-old shooting victim denies bringing a firearm into the stadium and denies having anything to do with the discharge of a firearm at the stadium, lawyer John Malm said in a statement issued Friday. He represents the woman, okay? So, the other thing, too, she hid it under her fat folds. Okay, not only do you guys want to start taking shots at teachers, no pun intended, you want to fat shame because she may have been a heavy woman, right?
Yeah,
she is she's a White Sox season ticket holder who underwent emergency medical treatment for 2 gunshot wounds to her right leg, Malm said in a statement. Malm's firm is investigating the incident and looking to pursue justice on behalf of our client. He said in the statement he did not immediately return calls for further comment. Police and city officials have said little else about what happened Friday night when the 42-year-old woman and a 26-year-old woman were hit by gunfire. On Monday, Superintendent Fred Waller told reporters that police had, quote, almost completely dispelled rumors that bullets came from a gun fired outside the ballpark. But ABC 7 reported Tuesday that top police officials have since held a high-level meeting to review evidence, leading them to reconsider all possibilities while they appear no closer to solving the case. So this might be another situation where the cops aren't saying what they might know because they want to make it ironclad. Maybe they did find a weapon inside Sox Park, Ed. I don't know, but they don't want to say anything because they want to,
doing a favor for Reinsdorf.
In a statement, CPD officials denied a report Tuesday that one of the injured women had gotten a gun past security by hiding it in her belly fat. So CPD is denying that report. This and again, she hid it under her shirt. Okay, belly fat. It also suggests they don't have metal detectors there, Ed. Yeah. This investigation is still active, and do they pat people down? I'm assuming if they don't have metal detectors, maybe they do a cursory pat down of people going in. But it was in her belly fat as opposed to underneath her shirt. This investigation is still active and ongoing, the police spokesperson said. Updates will be provided as they become available. A CPS spokesperson said in a statement that one of the injured women is a school teacher. The 42-year-old woman suffered 2 gunshot wounds to her right leg with one bullet that traveled through her thigh and another lodged in her shin, according to police reports obtained by the Sun-Times. Malm, the woman's lawyer, said evidence they've been reviewed rules out her injuries being self-inflicted. We've reviewed photographic evidence and x-rays of our client's injuries with firearms and medical experts who confirm the gunshot wound our client sustained was not self-inflicted and was not the result of her accidentally discharging a firearm. The brother of the 26-year-old woman who was shot told the Sun-Times they heard a noise similar to the squeeze of an empty water bottle before she discovered a bloody scrape in her lower abdomen. The crowd then formed around the older woman a few rows behind them as blood spilled on the bleachers. The brother told the Sun-Times he said he didn't know what caused the incident. Responding officers reported at least 2 shots were fired, with a third woman finding a bullet in her hoodie. Ed, don't you think someone sitting around these women would have seen if she pulled out a weapon?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if it was an accidental discharge, let's feed into the stupid conspiracy theories that she hid a weapon under her belly fat. How does the gun go off? You don't have a finger on the trigger. Her belly fat is not going into, the trigger area, right?
I don't know. Trigger. Yeah. I don't know enough about guns to know if a safety can come dislodged, but maybe that's what it is.
But you still have to pull a trigger, though. You have to pull
it
out. and you have to pull the trigger whether the safety's on or not. If it was accidentally I'm going down the speculation route, which I think is bullshit. If it was accidentally discharged under her shirt, under her belly fat, you still need a finger to do this. Right? And that's clearly not going to happen, even if she did have a weapon under her belly fat. She would have had to pull a weapon out. Someone would have had to have seen that. And why would she pull a weapon out and discharge it next to her friend? That's the logical stuff that doesn't add up to the idea that she had anything to do with it, at least in my mind.
Yeah. Confirming through Bing.com, I asked it, do they have metal detectors at Sox Park? It says yes.
Okay.
So, I don't know what it takes to set off a metal detector. I know people are walking through there with belt buckles that might be just a small amount of metal. And if you've got a gun that may be just as small and then maybe only have a certain amount of metal, including the barrel and the trigger and the firing pin, maybe they don't necessarily set off a metal detector. Maybe some scientist or some person in the chat can let us know if they know. I'm still skeptical that there was a gun inside the park. I think it's entirely possible that shots could have come from outside the park at a certain angle and just happen to hit these ladies at the same or similar time, coming back down, causing whatever injuries that they got. Maybe they wouldn't be as damaging or as fatal as a direct shot, closer range. But honestly, I don't know what kind of speed those things are traveling once they've arced and are now using gravity to accelerate. Maybe somebody who's good at math and bullet trajectories can let us know about how fast that bullet probably was going. You'd think that CSI for Chicago would have that information, and that would be something they could share for a potential possibility that if a bullet was traveling like that, how fast would it have been going?
Ed, could you hit the please stand by button?
Yes, I can. And we're back.
Not really.
Sort of back. You need more time, Jerry?
I need more time.
Okay.
I'm stuck doing it with the selfie stick all night. I was trying to, my browser's behaving properly when I'm opening stories, and I tried to open StreamYard again with my camera, and for whatever reason, there's something I can't figure out, so I'm just going to have to keep doing the show this way. So, not that I'm, it's hard to like see the live chat, read the stories, do the show the way I'm supposed to be doing it. So I'm just getting really, really frustrated here. So anyway, let me get the rest of the story up with the update on this, and I can read from that. And then throw my computer out the window after the show. Okay, so here's the update from Tom Chuba, as reported on the 30th. The police spokesperson said no theories had been ruled out. Days after interim police superintendent Fred Waller told reporters that investigators almost completely dispelled the possibility of gunfire coming from outside the stadium. So they're bouncing this back and forth. And the Sun-Times story is behind. Fuck it. It's behind a paywall. Let's move on.
It says, but that theory is now apparently back in play, is how that sentence ended.
Can you read it? You share it, since my browser is just...
Meanwhile, law enforcement sources told the Sun-Times that police are investigating whether one of the victims sneaked a gun into the stadium and handed it off to another person after it accidentally discharged. That victim, a 42-year-old woman from Montgomery, has obtained a lawyer who issued a statement Tuesday denying she brought a firearm into guaranteed rate Sox Park. Scott Reifert, the White Sox vice president of communications, said the team has reviewed video and found no evidence that a weapon was brought into the ballpark. The woman and others with her didn't trigger, quote, alerts on the security systems or raise suspicions, he said. If the police are finding something different or the evidence is leading them in a different direction here, ultimately it would be good to get some resolution, Reifert said. Just so we know and we know what we're dealing with and what we're trying to solve. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, which is always a fun time, has joined the investigation, according to a spokesperson who said the ATF is assisting the police department by providing, quote, state-of-the-art technology to analyze ballistic evidence recovered at the stadium. How does Chicago not have all of this stuff? Is all the money going to police salaries and pensions? Seriously, aren't there billions of dollars going to CPD? They don't have state-of-the-art technology?
And
That's irritating.
If with all the money that's going to CPD, we should be the safest city in the country.
Yeah. Or second to New York.
Yeah.
Because I think they get way more than we do, and that's ridiculous. A woman at the game said she found a bullet in her hoodie after the shooting. She gave it to a doctor who was tending the two women who were wounded, and the doctor said she passed it on to police. The Sox will host... Oh, whatever. 2 victims were struck by bullets around 7:30 Friday while sitting near Section 161 during the Sox game against the Oakland A's. So I'm guessing Section 161 are going to be discounted going forward. Yes? I'm just throwing that out there. Unless now that's going to be a seat where people want to sit. I don't know.
To memorialize it.
The 42-year-old woman suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the right leg. One of the bullets traveled through her thigh, and the other struck her calf and became lodged in her shin, the report said. Another woman, 26, was grazed by a bullet in her lower abdomen and refused medical treatment. A third woman said she felt a pinch to her back and found a bullet in the hood of her sweatshirt wrapped around her waist, according to the police report. None of the victims or witnesses mentioned in the police report could provide officers with a description of the shooter. See, I'm still thinking these bullets came from outside the park, but they're saying maybe someone snuck one in.
Yeah. Yeah.
The game continued to be played even though police initially asked it be halted for public safety reasons. Yeah, that's... I don't know. What do you do there, Jerry? You would think that they would stop the game, but
yeah, you would think,
or at least they would have a preliminary investigation saying, those bullets came from outside the park, so let's keep playing.
No, I mean, I think in any circumstance they'd have to shut things down because of unknown danger. Well, that's that. I wanted to share that because it is a very... I mean, think of how many people are there, how many eyes are on what's going on. No gun recovered inside the park. All eyes around these women, and supposedly a really well-trained police department that can't determine, in the absence of a weapon there, where the shots came from, and there are no witnesses to that can corroborate if the shots were inside the stadium. There used to be housing projects across from Comiskey Park, and there used to be fears in the past that it could be a sniper zone. I don't know if there are any tall buildings around Comiskey Park anymore that could serve as someone just deciding to be an asshole and take shots towards the stadium. Not even aiming at anybody, but I don't dismiss your idea of somebody shooting in the air and then it coming down, that the whole deceleration of the bullet is what I think kind of deflates that theory.
Well, I guess it just depends on how fast those bullets are still traveling by the time they make it back down into the stadium.
All right, well, let's move on to our next story, which, again, slow news week, but this was interesting since the original NASCAR event dealt with so many issues with the weather. This comes from Block Club Chicago. As reported by Melody Mercado, many downtown neighbors don't want another year of NASCAR, survey shows. More than half of neighbors surveyed by Alderman Brendan Riley don't want the street race to return, but the city and NASCAR have a 3-year deal to keep the race in Chicago unless either side opts out. The survey from Riley's office generated 662 responses about the inaugural NASCAR Chicago street race, July 1st through the 2nd, which booked a big chunk of Grant Park's summer season because of setup and teardown. Residents were asked 3 questions related to NASCAR's outreach, traffic closures in the future, and future NASCAR races in Chicago. More than half of respondents, 54%, said they would not support more than 54% said they would not support holding future NASCAR races in Chicago. About 37% of respondents said they would support another NASCAR race, and 8% said they felt indifferent. When it came to traffic, 58% of respondents said the race's street closures negatively impacted their travels, compared to 34% who said it didn't affect them. Hey, didn't we call this ahead of time? And how it also threw off the rest of the summer activities there in Grant Park as it related to Taste of Chicago and stuff around the Pritzker Pavilion Music Dome.
Yeah, I'm not shocked by this. I'm not too thrilled with the small sample size for polling, but I guess if he's just polling in a certain ward, then maybe he's not going to expect to get, more than 1,000 people responding to it. But
and I think they really should poll the ward that's most impacted, the people who live in that community. They're the ones who were hit hardest by, traffic closures, businesses that couldn't stay open because of what was going on before and after. Asked if neighbors were satisfied with NASCAR's outreach, about 38% said yes, 32% said no, and 29% said they felt neutral. Riley, whose ward includes Grant Park, blasted former Mayor Lori Lightfoot for a lack of transparency in bringing NASCAR to town, saying she was not looped into the plan until hours before the announcement. So we reported on this. Lightfoot made the decision, did not consult with the community, because we know what Queen Lori wanted, Queen Lori got. Riley has said he thinks the city's 3-year deal with NASCAR could still be killed, but praised NASCAR executives for their communication with his office and neighbors in the lead up to the July race. According to an August 25th edition of his newsletter, the alderman said the survey responses, along with results from a recently commissioned NASCAR economic impact study, will help determine his position on the street race's future. The study is being conducted by the Sports Industry Research Center at Temple University and was commissioned in July by Choose Chicago, the city's tourism arm. The clock is ticking as NASCAR and the city can opt out 180 days before the second event next year. According to NASCAR's contract with the Chicago Park District, that means a decision needs to be made roughly before the end of the year. The NASCAR, this would be like an opportunity for Johnson to step up and show some leadership in making a decision.
Yeah.
The NASCAR street race was estimated to bring $110 million into the local economy, according to a February report from the Sun-Times. But that puts the street race behind two other major Grant Park events, Sueños and Lollapalooza. In its first year, the Sueños Music Fest in Grant Park generated $120 million, and this year generated $181.6 million in economic impact for the city. Sueños takes second place to Lollapalooza, which generated $335.4 million last year in indirect economic revenue in Chicago, according to the study C3 commissioned. The street race has also faced controversy over how long it took over green space at Grant Park. Originally, the race was forecasted for a 2-week takeover. Block Club Chicago revealed the setup event and teardown was extended to 39 days, which originally resulted in softball leagues being booted from playing at Grant Park. Permanent vendors at Grant Park also have said they had a tough time making money because they were forced to shut down for several days because of street closures and race setup around the park. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The city NASCAR, this year NASCAR paid the Chicago Park District a $500,000 permit fee. The racing behemoth is scheduled to pay $550,000 in 2024 and $605,000 in 2025 if those races are staged. According to its contract, the Park District will also receive 15% of net commissions on concession and merchandise, plus $2 per admission ticket, the contract states. I don't know. I can't read the live chat easily, but what do you all think of the live chat? I want to see in the live chat who wants to see NASCAR come back, who wants to see it leave. And I'll let Ed share the results on screen there from my little cell phone I'm trying to produce the show from right now.
While we're waiting for people to chime in on the future of NASCAR in Chicago, I just wanted to mention it was kind of a debacle in the first place just because of all the rainstorms and stuff that happened over that weekend. So
yeah.
All the revenue that they thought that they might be getting from concessions and stuff, they probably weren't getting much. And so it's kind of hard to tell if it was going to be a success, but also this was NASCAR's 75th anniversary. So I think this was one of those things where it was going to be a once in a lifetime kind of thing, but they just happened to sign up for a 3-year deal. And so I'll bet NASCAR really is ambivalent about whether they want to come back to Chicago, because they accomplished what they wanted to do. They did something spectacular during their 75th anniversary, even though it didn't quite turn out how they wanted it to.
I hope you're right. I think that keeping it here 3 years was Lori Lightfoot assuming that she was still going to stay mayor so that she could capitalize on it. I think a lot of that offer had to do with that as well. And, thank heavens she's gone. Now it's going to be up to Johnson, as well as whatever sway the elder person and the people in the neighborhood have over, voicing their concerns to the mayor. And if this is really worth doing again, given the losses to local businesses. By the way, Ed, since I don't have access to my StreamYard, I did send you 2 files on Slack in the media and links folder that I just wanted you to have for our last 2 stories when we get to them, since I'm not going to be able to upload them to StreamYard.
Okay.
Just have them ready on that end.
Okay, I'll keep those I'll keep those handy.
Yeah, we're kind of getting
go
towards our last stories.
Let's jump over to the chat and see what they have to say about NASCAR. Extra Bulla, Uncle Warren says NASCAR is not for cities like Chicago, in my opinion. I mean, we have race tracks near Chicago that are made for this kind of stuff. I mean, it was kind of a spectacle for them to actually do it in the city with the skyline and stuff in the background. And they got that video and they got all those shots and it was cool, kind of, but I don't need to see that again.
Yeah, there's not going to be any real wonder from this point out, especially given the challenges that they had. Now, if there hadn't been bad weather, maybe it would have been something more to lean on. But, even if they had good weather, Ed, all of the ways that this thing shut down the neighborhood and made it difficult for people living there. And you've also got the element there that the previous mayor didn't give a damn what people in the neighborhood thought. She just rammed it through, as she normally did a lot of things. So I just think that, great, we saw it. The only people that could afford seeing it were, elite people living in Chicago anyway. This really wasn't, the average Chicago citizens event like
I think
or Taste of Chicago would be accessible to everybody.
Yeah, tickets, I think like the cheapest tickets were like $200 or something. So you really have to like racing and NASCAR and stuff to want to buy tickets for this event. So Mad Matt Chicago says, I love race cars. Jim Cree says, no thanks. Fred Edward is still hitting us up for pizza. He's claiming he ordered some pizza from Chicago Corner waiting on delivery. Fred, we don't deliver. Not that kind of delivery yet.
So maybe the consensus seems to be no with NASCAR, though.
Yeah, Kathy Power says, get rid of it. It's not for real people.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it, Kathy.
Arturo says, planning anything in Chicago means pissing everyone off somehow or some way. Jim Cree says, NASCAR is worse than a smash and grab.
I also got a text message from a family member asking how they could provide some commentary on White Sox Park, that incident, even though we're past that story. I don't know what platform you're watching on, if you're on Facebook, but the best way you can share a comment in the chat, and I am actually interested in their perspective, is go to our YouTube channel, because we're getting the direct feed from our YouTube chat. So, and that was my sister, Stacy. Stacy, if you have something to offer that makes sense with the Sox Park story, I am curious to know what your insight is. So go to our YouTube channel, look up Chicago Corner, and you can add it to the live chat, and we'll come back to that, because I'm curious to hear her perspective on that.
Yeah. And if you are watching us from the Facebook live stream, you can make comments in there. It's just, it shows up on our end as just saying Facebook user. So if you're going to make comments in there, just tell us your first name before you start your comment so we know who's talking to us.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's the NASCAR update. Now, this next story was kind of interesting. I had not. Oh, so she said she just sent it in the YouTube chat. Do you see anything coming up there?
From Stacy?
Yeah.
Yeah, she says she's on and wants to talk about Reinsdorf.
Oh, she wants to talk about, in the chat in regarding to Sox. Well, go ahead, Stacy. What do you have to share about Reinsdorf? Let's take the NASCAR screen down, and I wish I had more control over producing the show right now. I'd send her a link so she could join us, but I'm only on my phone here, and my computer's got me. Stacy, what is your comment about Reinsdorf?
She says he made a statement that the bullet came from outside the park.
Okay. Stace, where did you see that reported? I mean, I believe you. I'm just curious to know which, because we were covering from the Sun-Times and the Tribune and Block Club Chicago, and I didn't see anything about Reinsdorf claiming it came from outside the park.
I think I actually heard it this morning on the morning news on the radio.
Okay.
It was a quote from Reinsdorf. I don't know if that he said that it came from outside the park, but he did say that there were no bullets coming inside the park.
Okay.
So
Stacy calls it damage control. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody got a gun into the ballpark and they don't want that getting around, as I said earlier in the program, it's possible that they just asked the police, look, man, we can't have people thinking that somebody got a gun into our ballpark.
With the metal detectors that you said that they have there.
Yeah.
Mad Matt Chicago says the money does not want the bullets to have come from inside of the park. Yeah. Well, Mad Matt, because then that would suggest that security inside the park is completely lax, and anybody is then exposed to being injured or killed. Stacy says, I will send the link on his statements. Cops are pissed. Oh,
well, maybe some of them had said something otherwise.
Yeah. Yep. Well, Stacy, thanks for joining tonight. I didn't know you watched. I'm glad to know. I didn't think many people in my family watch, aside from my mom, who never watches live. She'll watch it the next day, then she'll text me everything I was wrong about. But I'm glad to.
Yeah, that's weird because my mom does the same thing and also texts me about everything that you were wrong about.
And you know what I always tell my mom?
I need a rim shot sound effect for that.
I tell my mom, you really have some strong opinions, Mom, like I do. Maybe you should get your own show.
Look,
she'd never join us here, though.
Look, be a Patreon supporter. Donate more than $5 a month. Come on and be a guest. Give us your 2 cents.
Yeah. As we've offered. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the perks of being a $5 a month Patreon, is that if you want to come on the show once a month and help us co-host a show for the whole show or bring a story you want to talk about with us, my God, what an opportunity. What a platform to share what you have, your own thoughts, your own opinions, as well as a story you want to bring. And we will make special exceptions to people who are not necessarily Patreons if it's really, really newsworthy. So throwing that out there also. All right. So moving into our next story from Block Club Chicago, is reported by Carlos Ballesteros in Justice Watch, Shannon Heffernan, WBEZ, and Amy Kinn at WBEZ. Dying and disabled Illinois prisoners kept behind bars despite new medical release law. The Joe Coleman Medical Release Act was expected to have freed hundreds of terminally ill and medically incapacitated prisoners in Illinois by now, but only a few dozen have been released, an investigation from Injustice Watch and WBEZ reveals. Now, I found this story right before the show. I didn't get a chance to dive into it really deep, so I'm going to be learning as we unwrap this story, but my first impressions are, I'm wondering if this relates to all prisoners or if they are just keeping violent offenders behind bars. Something tells me it's going to be all disabled prisoners or people with medical issues. But let's get into the story and talk about it. Philip Merritt's dementia is so advanced he's lost the ability to speak. But with the help of his cellmates at Western Illinois Correctional Center, the 71-year-old still manages to get on the phone with his brother every few weeks. He has to have someone call me, and then I don't know what to say to him because he can't understand a thing, so I'll just talk, said Merritt's brother, Michael Merritt, in an interview. All he can say are 2 words. I mean, he's just gone. Merritt's deteriorating condition makes him a prime candidate to get out of prison under the Joe Coleman Medical Release Act. a pivotal criminal justice reform bill touted by Governor J.B. Pritzker and Illinois Democrats as an effective way to alleviate. And that's where my mind went here too, is like, if they're not dangerous and they don't need guarding, and they can, be better served by the care of their families or an institution outside the prison system, why wouldn't you figure out how to get them out? As an effective way to alleviate the state's decrepit prison healthcare system, reduce the quote-unquote staggering costs of caring for ailing people in prison, and reunite families with frail loved ones. Under the act, named after a decorated Army veteran who died of prostate cancer while incarcerated, Illinois prisoners can request early release if they're terminally ill and expected to die within 18 months, or if they're medically incapacitated and need help with more than one activity of daily living, such as eating or using the bathroom. But a year and a half since the Coleman Act went into effect, an investigation by Injustice Watch and WBEZ found far fewer prisoners have been released under the law than expected, as the medical release process has become mired in the charged politics. It's always the politics of criminal justice reform in the post-George Floyd era. Behind the lower than expected numbers is the Prisoner Review Board, a state body appointed by Pritzker and confirmed by the Illinois Senate with final say on medical release requests. As of mid-August, the board had denied nearly 2/3 of medical release requests from dying and disabled prisoners who met the medical criteria to get out of prison under the Coleman Act, including merit. I couldn't believe it, his brother said. How could they deny him? He can't even talk. More than half of the 94 denied applicants were older than age 60. Half had spent the last at least 15 years behind bars. According to an analysis of state prison data, at least 2 died in prison, including an 81-year-old who'd been incarcerated for more than 3 decades and was scheduled to be released in 2025. Another man died 5 days before the board denied his request. Meanwhile, the Prisoner Review Board has only granted 52 medical releases, a rate of fewer than 3 releases per month on average, since board members began voting on those requests, records show. Advocates say the board is undermining the Coleman Act and forcing ill-equipped prison staff to care for dying and disabled prisoners, even those with families practically begging to take them off their hands. Our prison system is now completely overburdened by people who pose absolutely no risk to public safety, but are tremendously expensive to care for, said Jennifer Sobel, lead author of the Coleman Act and executive director of the Illinois Prison Project, a nonprofit legal group that represents dozens of medical release applicants. From a cost-saving perspective, from government efficiency perspective, and truly from a moral perspective, and you know me, Ed, to me, I'm going to lean more on the moral perspective, which I think should trump everything else. We need to be doing something differently here, she said. If you scroll down, there's a picture there of Jennifer Sobel. Donald Shelton, chair of the Prisoner Review Board, declined an interview request, but he defended the board's record on medical release requests in his email sent through a spokesperson. Each case that comes before the board comes with its own set of circumstances to be studied and evaluated by members, he wrote. Due diligence is given by the board to every person who sets a petition before them. You know what my instinct is, Ed? They just want to see these people rot and die in prison because it's so black and white to them. Well, if they're in prison, then that's what they deserve. Forgetting about the elements being introduced here, especially in the next paragraph, more medical releases could save taxpayers millions regarding prisoners who are of no danger whatsoever to the public anymore and have served a substantial amount of time anyway. This is not like, oh, we're going to let them out. They're going to have an easy time. They are terminally ill. In cases like the one in the beginning of the article, dealing with dementia where they can't even talk, don't know what's going on around them. It's cruel. What do you think?
I don't have enough. I'm sorry. I've been doing a little bit in the background here, so I'm paying 100% attention to this. But
that's okay. Let me get to the next paragraph. And I didn't know that you were multitasking, but because I'm curious to know what you think. Based on my throwing out an opinion. But let me read a little bit more, and then we can unwrap it. As the article shares, more medical releases could save taxpayers millions. It's unclear exactly how many of Illinois' nearly 30,000 prisoners could qualify for medical release. Under the Coleman Act, the Illinois Department of Corrections is required to keep track of that number, but department officials said they don't have it yet. A department spokesperson said the data would be published by year's end. What is clear From years of scathing reports from an independent monitor appointed by a federal judge, is Illinois prisons are unfit to provide health care for the thousands of aging, disabled, and incapacitated prisoners. I would guess that they're probably not even providing it for the regular healthy prisoners. Half of the state's prison medical staff jobs are currently vacant. No one is around to care for them. Some are even left sitting in their own waste, according to the monitor's reports. Prescriptions go unrenewed. Cancers go undiagnosed. In the worst cases, as everyone here knows, people die painful deaths because of lack of care. Attorney Camille Bennett with the ACLU of Illinois said at a recent hearing on health care in state prisons. Even this substandard care is expensive. Illinois paid $250 million last fiscal year to Wexford Health Sources, a for-profit company contracted to provide health care to state prisoners according to state records.
Contracted. Because it's all private healthcare. It's all profit motive based healthcare, and that's the low end of the rung as far as what care is provided. And it's like they have no incentive to provide better care for people who are incarcerated, and it's terrible
because it can't be afforded. Oh boy, I'm getting messages here. Oh my God, my battery's almost out. Hang on a second. I want to drop out of the show. Let me connect my charger. Hang on, guys. It's like fucking doing a show with bubblegum and spit right now with these technical issues. Okay, I just plugged in my phone, so hopefully I won't drop out. Okay. The next paragraph goes on to say Wexford's 10-year contract expired in 2021, but the company continues providing care as Illinois seeks new bidders. This is all about the money. When we're talking about the fact we can't afford to take care of them, why don't you do the early release for prisoners who are of no threat? Why wouldn't you want to do this if it's all about the money?
They've created these systems. It's a labyrinth of red tape and bureaucracy and deals and contracts, and it's you feel like just pulling your hair out because you know that we could do better, but people in positions of power just don't want to.
They never do. They're sitting pretty where they are, making their money, and doing the least amount of work necessary to validate what their jobs or their positions or what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, and I mean I could get on my soapbox again, but I mean you guys have heard it from me. The federal government has always been just very lax as far as the things that they can do and the things they choose to do. And they keep using excuses like we can't afford it. Yes, you can, because it's not coming out of our pockets. The federal government issues the currency. They can spend money on anything as long as there's available resources.
Kathy makes a very, very legitimate point. And I think you're right, Kathy. I think that this is why they're not fast tracking these releases, which they should. For the expenses, prison is about torture, not rehabilitation. Free them, they get minimal medical care anyway. Yeah, well, but then, those that are happy to see them there wouldn't feel like they got their full pound of flesh, right?
Yeah, I mean, you get some politicians who say it's a rehabilitation thing, but, how many of them actually mean it? And then they're battling with the other politicians who really just want it to be punishment. That's
we're talking about prisoners who are ill. You're torturing people that are of no threat anyway anymore, who've done their time. Releasing more people under the Coleman Act could bring down the long-term cost of prison health care, said Alan Mills, executive director of the Uptown People's Law Center, a legal clinic in Chicago whose lawsuits against the state led to the appointment of the independent monitor. Quote, the more prisoners there are who are medically needy, the higher the cost of caring for them, and the higher the bids will be. So, you got to wonder about who's making the money here to keep them in there and providing the least possible quality of care, but is still profiting off of the fact that they're in there. That's where my mind goes. You have to keep them there because somebody's making money, as opposed to letting them go, and then the costs drop down. But then some crony of the state or someone who helped them get that contract is not profiting off of the incarceration of the prisoners who are seniors, debilitated, or completely incapacitated, even though they're not giving them any standard of care. They're still billing the prison system. Conversely, if the Prisoner Review Board approved more medical releases, the cost savings for taxpayers in the long term could be in the millions, Mills said. Daniel Kahn, perfect last name, Ed. Daniel Kahn, C-O-N-N, chief executive of Wexford Health Sources, did not respond to an interview request. LaToya Hughes, acting director of the Illinois Department of Corrections, also declined to comment. There are other, more immediate savings for Illinois taxpayers if more ailing prisoners are released, Mills said. A recent government report showed Illinois spends more than $76,000 on average to incarcerate a single person for a year. And you know a lot of those are nonviolent offenders, Ed. Experts say terminally ill and incapacitated prisoners are more expensive to care for. Prisoners whose medical needs can't be met in prison infirmaries are escorted to and from hospitals by guards. With prisons short-staffed, officers already routinely require overtime pay. It's the for-profit prison system. I mean, I don't even have to read any further. That's what this is about.
Yeah, well, and then it's a step further because you've got the prison industrial complex and the prison medical industrial complex. And clearly, insurance companies already scamming the general public with their super high premiums and deductibles, and then continuously denying coverage for people who with legitimate health claims. But now it's even easier for them to deny health care claims to people in prison.
Yeah. My battery keeps saying low even though I'm plugged in here. If I drop out, Ed, and viewers, that's what's going on here. I got my battery plugged in, but I was so low, I think that the charger is trying to catch up. By refusing to release more ailing prisoners, the Prison Review Board is also making it harder for prison medical staff to care for everyone else, Mills said. What limited resources we have are being devoted to people who are most seriously mentally or physically ill, and that doesn't leave any health care for anybody else at all, he said.
Yeah.
At the same time, the overburdened healthcare system is also blocking more prisoners from getting out under the Coleman Act. Prisoners must be found qualified for medical release by a prison doctor or nurse before the board votes on their case. But prisoners often wait weeks or months to know whether they'll qualify. Records show in one case, a prisoner at Illinois River Correctional Center waited 152 days before finding out he didn't qualify for release. Prison medical, look, what more is there to go into here? What do you guys think in the live chat? Let's toss it to our viewers here. Should somebody who's in prison, even if they suffer some kind of medical condition or they're no longer any threat to society, be expected to carry out their sentence at the expense of what it costs taxpayers, or should some mercy be shown and, less money be paid to these medical providers that are bidding on the for-profit prison system to take more money from taxpayers? Did I slant the question?
What was the question?
I forgot. I'm so distracted here by how hard it is to do this broadcast. I'm sorry. The question was, what do our viewers in the live chat think? Do they think that prisoners should do their time, even if they're sick, at the expense of taxpayers, or should some mercy be shown because clearly they're no longer a threat to society? They've done their time, and we need to free up resources and stop shoveling money into this for-profit prison system. And that's what it is. Actually, that's not, I don't think that's hyperbole slanting the vote. Those are the facts related to this. My sister says our system doesn't have decent rehabilitation compared to other first world countries. Yeah. And Stacey's got a very good point there too, because if you're talking about the fact the system is supposed to rehabilitate people and it's not, and then you've got sick people in there that the system is overburdened by, taxpayer money is not going to rehabilitate people, nor is it going towards caring for the people properly that are no longer any kind of a threat to society in there. There are other frail and disabled prisoners who don't see a doctor on a regular basis, so there's no way for the doctors to know about their condition. Sobel said. Medical release decisions dictated by politics. The Prison Review Board never told Merritt why they denied his brother's medical release request. Their deliberations happened behind closed doors, and the law doesn't require them to provide an explanation. Board Chair Shelton said members weigh many factors when voting on medical release requests, but they primarily focus on this is what I said earlier, on the applicant's prior convictions, where they plan to live once they're released, and testimonials from the victims of their crimes. An analysis of the board's decision showed there's likely another factor at play: politics. Under state law, the board is required to be roughly evenly split between Democrats and Republicans. The 12 current members include former law enforcement officials, educators, attorneys, and counselors. Pritzker appoints all board members, who are then confirmed by the state Senate. Medical release requests are decided by panels of 3 board members. At least 2 must agree to either approve or deny a request. Shelton said board members are chosen randomly for the panels, but so far, ready? Republicans have cast more votes in medical release cases than Democrats, and they are much more likely to deny those requests, an analysis of voting data shows. Really? Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it? The cruelty of the right. Republican board members are voting in disproportionately more medical release cases than Democrat board members, and denying them at a higher rate. And there's a chart down there at the bottom. 3 out of 4 board members with the highest denial rates, Jared Boland, Kenneth Tupy, and Leanne Miller, are Republicans. Each of them voted to deny release in more than 70% of the cases they heard, and each voted on more than a third of all medical release requests, voting data shows. You know what's interesting to me, Ed? For Republicans who don't want to see taxpayer money wasted, why are they wasting taxpayer money?
It's the hypocrisy of the kayfabe
To serve their
duopoly.
bloodlust. Yeah.
It's just constant bullshit is what it is, because they want to have this dog whistle, but then they want to have their cake and eat it too with the opposing dog whistle that contradicts the first one. And so they don't care that they don't make sense. They don't care that they're giant hypocrites on one thing while they oppose another thing. This is the nature of the kayfabe duopoly. And that's why you're always going to have more Republicans voting to deny, bail or early release or whatever, than Democrats, because that's the role they play.
Well, Arturo shares incarcerations turn a profit for the Republican Party. My sister asks, just trying to understand, how does it profit the Republican Party? Well, I think what Arturo's talking to, Stacey, is the fact that I would venture to guess a lot of these bidders, these big corporations, are probably maybe more white, big business leaning, with more conservative values in politics. I mean, that's speculation, but I don't think that's that far off. Boland and Tupy, along with Democrat Matthew Coates, were on the panel that denied Philip Merritt's medical release request in July. They voted to deny 6 out of 7 requests that day, records show. A month earlier, Boland was part of another panel, this time with 2 other Democrats, when they heard the case of 82-year-old Saul Colbert. Okay, so here's Colbert's circumstances. I'm trying to see if my camera's still level. All right. Like Merritt, Colbert developed dementia while serving time for armed robbery. They both also had previous violent convictions, records show. Merritt had a conviction for attempted murder, while Colbert was convicted of murder. Okay, hey, nothing to condone there. When they've literally lost control of their faculties, though, is that still a reason to keep them in there? Both had family ready to take them in, and both were represented by the same attorney with the Illinois Prison Project, but the board voted 2-1 to release Colbert, with Boland voting against. The only difference between those cases was the panel, Sobel said. Through a spokesperson, Boland, Tupy, and Miller declined to answer questions about their voting records. Oh, here he comes. He sees I've got another camera here. I got something to say? And again, through a spokesperson, Boland, Tupy, and Miller declined to answer questions about their voting records. Lisa Daniels, a former board member and restorative justice practitioner, said she believes some of her former colleagues are ideologically against letting anyone out of prison early. Boom. Mic drop. That's what it is. They simply believe that a person should complete the entirety of their sentence, no matter the circumstances they present in their petition, no matter how that person may have shown themselves to be redeemed, or no matter if they're no longer a threat to public safety, Daniels said. Daniels resigned from the board in January, one of 6 Democrats to step down or fail to be appointed since 2021. In the past few years, the state GOP has turned the board into a new front in the ongoing debate over criminal justice reform. Democrats who have a supermajority in the state Senate have failed to muster enough support among their ranks to get Pritzker's appointments through, leaving the board with 3 vacant seats. Pritzker, too, declined an interview request. In a statement, he acknowledges administration has had a hard time recruiting potential board members because of the frayed political atmosphere around its work. In today's political climate, where supporting common sense criminal justice reform has become a lightning rod, the Coleman Act's initial success should be seen as a major progress in the right direction. The day Pritzker signed the Coleman Act, its main sponsor, State Representative Will Guzzardi, Democrat of Chicago, said in a press release, the law would transform Illinois prison system and allow families to properly say goodbye to their loved ones. I'm sorry we couldn't afford this mercy to Joe Coleman, but I'm proud that we'll be able to do so for hundreds of other Illinoisans, Guzzardi said. Criminal justice reformers celebrated the Coleman Act as a model for other states, but so far the act has failed to live up to its promise, said Mary Price, FAMM's general counsel and the report's author. So, yeah, that's... Philip Merritt's attorney is in the process of refiling his medical release request. His brother Michael doesn't know whether he'll get out this time, and he hasn't been able to reach Philip in 3 weeks. The cellmate who would help facilitate the calls was apparently transferred. Do you think that's a coincidence? I don't think so. But he's certain he and his family can give Philip a more humane send-off than any prison could. At least he could go peacefully, he said. All right, that's that article. Interesting story for conversation. What's happening in the live chat here? Who's Fred Edward? Is this one of Daniel Lupker's?
No, I don't think so. Fred's been a long time viewer of independent media shows in Chicago. I don't know what he's on about with the pizza there, unless he's relaying a message there. But we're just trying to do a show.
Yeah. I mean, Kit told me if we're not in touch with Kit anymore, Fred. I don't know why Kit told you that. I mean, no offense to Kit. Like the guy, but we're no longer colleagues or associated with HLM, so not sure what all the pizza talk is about or why it keeps flooding the chat, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, we kind of want to talk about the stories, not... Fred is nothing but fun. Okay, Stace, I got... All right. See the fiery Vasilatos temper coming into the chat, as it does here on this end when I do the show. All right, let's move on from pizza and let's move on from this story to our final stories on the broadcast.
Yes.
It's Labor Day, an important day. And in Chicago, the Pullman neighborhood was a lightning rod for the labor movement, given how the labor unit was born in the Pullman neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. And the article at Block Club shares by Maxwell Evans, Pullman, where labor was born, to host Chicago's parade for the first time in decades. I was kind of surprised to find this out, that it hadn't been hosted in Pullman that often previously. The 2023 parade kicks off noon Saturday and is followed by Eddie Fest, an annual celebration of workers' unions and the Chicago labor movement.
Not named after me.
The 2023 Labor Day parade kicks off noon Saturday at 108th Street and Cottage Grove Avenue with more than 100 floats. The route goes south along Cottage Grove to 113th Street and then heads east before ending at St. Lawrence Avenue. The parade is followed by Eddie Fest, a celebration of workers' unions and the Chicago labor movement. It's named after Ed Sidlowski, a steel worker at the U.S. Steel South Works and prominent union activist. Eddie Fest features live music, crafts, food vendors, a beer garden, archery range, a dry fishing demonstration, bounce houses, and other activities. It takes place 1 to 6 p.m. Saturday in Pullman Park at 11101 South Cottage Grove in the adjoining Arcade Park. The parade is organized by the Chicago Federation of Labor. Okay. The Labor Day parades moved to Pullman following the retirement of Alderman Susan Sadlowski Garza. Earlier this year, said Terry Gage, the superintendent of Pullman National Historical Park. The response to the move has been largely positive. There are always a few concerns about parking, but people who live in Pullman are very proud of the community and proud of their history and excited to share it with the rest of the city. Now, for those that don't know, Pullman is home to 2 watershed moments in the American labor movement, Gage said. The first is the Pullman Palace Car Company strike of 1894, which took place when the company cut workers' pay but did not reduce costs of living in its company town. Now, for those that aren't familiar with the Pullman model, the Pullman rail car company, they would create all the fancy rail cars for the railroad, or the trains that operated then, and they would provide affordable housing for their employees, and they created the Pullman neighborhood where if you worked for Pullman, you lived there. They gave you a house that was affordable. It was a community that, I guess it had pros and cons. Pros is that it was affordable, but you were really under the thumb of the Pullman company. And this ended up resulting in the strike of 1894, which took place, again, repeating, when the company cut workers' pay. It cut the workers' pay of all the people that lived in that community, but it didn't reduce the cost it was charging the employees who lived in its company town. The Pullman strike was so effective in disabling the nation's railroads that the federal government resorted to military force in order to break the strike, leaving a couple dozen people dead. They don't have to resort to military force anymore. It just needs the president to say, oh, sorry, railway workers, you're not striking, as we saw last December, because, we have to appease our donors in the Democrat or the Republican Party. The strike is indirectly responsible for us having a National Labor Day holiday, Gage said, as President Grover Cleveland declared the holiday amid the walkout in an effort to appease striking union members. The second pivotal moment is the formation of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters in 1925, Gage said. It became the first black workers' union to negotiate a contract with a major corporation when its members struck a deal with the Pullman Company in 1937. A National A. Philip Randolph Pullman Porter Museum at 10406 South Maryland Avenue was created in 1995. To honor the black men who were an integral part of the Pullman Railcar Company, the museum uses photography, videos, and other archival material to teach visitors about the porters. So for anybody, that still doesn't have a handle on what Labor Day is all about, I think it's great that they're returning the parade to the Pullman neighborhood, which was foundational to the labor movement. As union retirees, people are elated to see the city's Labor Day parade come to their neighborhood. They plan to share their stories with attendees of the parade and Eddie Fest while taking in plentiful food and activities. Thank God for the union, one participant, Al Quirot, said. I was entitled to retire at the age of 45. How long are people working till now? 65, beyond? I had dinner with an old friend of mine the other day from high school. I got a chance to see her and her little boy and her husband, who I haven't seen since, I think, their wedding. Wonderful family. This guy is 74, and he's still working. Why, Ed? Because of his health care benefits. Yeah. And we were talking politics and health care, and they're Biden-leading Democrats. And he asked me why, and he said he wanted to have his mind, he wanted to be challenged on why Biden was such a bad choice as opposed to Trump. And I said, I'm not advocating for Trump, but what I am advocating for is you having a little bit better perspective that why do I feel the Democrats can't be trustworthy is because of, let's talk about healthcare. When Obama had both houses of Congress and started where he should have started at trying to get single payer and negotiate down to public option. Instead, he started at public option and negotiated down to, let's let the health insurance companies negotiate what affordable care is. I said, that was a betrayal. And the Democrats had both houses. And when he didn't join the picket line before his second term, when he ran for re-election, that showed me he's not pro-labor and he's not pro-healthcare for all. he was a charlatan, betraying the interests of people who voted Democrat, which just leads to now, a lot of what we talk about. I don't see much difference in either side. And as you describe them as the kayfabe duopoly, or as I like to say, the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals, it's all a big game.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who win, not us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you're just giving one example. I mean, people, you can go on Twitter and people have a huge laundry list of the reasons why Biden is not any better than Trump and is possibly worse in a number of ways. We don't have to go into all of them now, but it's just that when they make all these promises and they don't follow through on them, but then they go on television and tell you that they did.
Right.
And then
now, I'm sorry. Do you have the video from Slack? Because I want to share a video that Ed shared with me that is not necessarily Labor Day focused, but I think it speaks more to what we're talking about here and how generationally we're all brainwashed to be divided against each other and buy into this myth of hard work, this ethic of killing ourselves, and that's what's going to get us farther ahead. Look, I'm all for hard work and a good work ethic, but unless you have generational wealth, unless you are part of a class that already has some advantages, it's just presented this way to keep us fighting with each other and believing the Horatio Alger myth that if you work hard, you're going to get ahead. I hate to bring this back to myself, but I'm just going to use it as an example. And Ed, I mean, I've shared this with you. I've been killing myself for 10 years to get my product that I've got on the market to a higher level. And I'm a sole proprietor. I am very ambitious. I have a very strong work ethic. I've got fantastic success to a certain point, but without a lot of money or partners or other people. And I reach out to other companies that have the ability to take this further. They're not interested because they don't know me, because I'm not related to them. And that's not going to stop me from continuing to work hard. But I'm only sharing my experience because I know a lot of people who run small businesses are in a very similar situation. It's very difficult for you to grow your company or achieve the type of success you know that your product or your services should achieve if you don't have the resources or the hand up, not the handout, to get to the next level. And a lot of the time that's provided by your connections, your generational wealth, or who you're friends with. But let's put this video up that Ed shared with me, because I really appreciate you found this, Ed, and you shared it with me. Forget about the video. The video is there just to be able to fill time while you're hearing what the narrator's saying, and the video has nothing to do with the narration here. But I do think the message that this content creator shared really struck a chord with me, and I think it kind of relates to Labor Day and what we're talking about here.
And do we have a credit? I forget this guy's name, but he's got a YouTube channel, I found him on Instagram. I don't recall his name at the top of my brain right now.
And this also applies to how we're divided, how we're, red meat is tossed out to people to hate the immigrants. It's tossed out to hate people of different races. It's tossed out to hate people of different gender identities. It's tossed out, between workers left and right who should be uniting with each other instead of looking at the red and the blue color of their political party team affiliations. So I think this particular narrative fits a lot of what we cover here.
Let's see if I've got his credit here really quick here. It's Lehigh Valley Workshop. That's his name on Instagram.
Okay.
And okay. So I just want to give him proper credit for this thing, because he's really good. I mean, and also he starts a lot of his videos by saying "greetings, fuckheads" or something. Don't take it personally. Okay.
I'd like to say that poor people aren't your enemy and that you're misdirecting your anger at people who are suffering as much, if not more than you, that the real target is the needlessly complex institutions put in place to disenfranchise the working class. But the problem is, even if all of that is true, is it possible to undo the decades of socialization blaming individuals for the failures of our institutions? We're born and raised in a society that from our first breath implants in us the idea that one of the highest, most moral characteristics is working hard, and that a good work ethic determines how far you'll make it in society. Every one of the gods of capitalism we're told to worship all have some bullshit story about how hard they work to make it happen, starting companies in their parents' garages or working 2 full-time jobs while taking classes and still finding time between all of that to work hard on their businesses. We just carefully omit the wealth of their parents or the unique situation that allowed them to thrive. Evangelical dogma furthers these ideas by telling Christians that working hard makes you a holy person in the eyes of God, and you'll be rewarded for the work you do. Kind of a side note, but it amazes me how Christian extremism has co-opted this work narrative when Jesus spent most of his preaching days wandering around relying on the generosity of others for food and shelter. And due to all of that propaganda we've been raised with, in the United States, being poor is seen as a moral failure. How often have you seen an unhoused person on the street and one of your friends says something like, "What did they do to get like this?" It's always framed from the perspective that in order to be poor, you had to make the choice. You fucked up in some way and you're reaping the consequences of preventable actions. We never frame it as, how did our society fail this person? This is why so many people feel justified in demonizing our social safety net. Why should some moral failure of a person who made the decision to be poor get my taxpayer money? They should just clean themselves up, apply for a job, and get back on their feet. We've been raised to believe that somehow our society is equitable and everyone starts on the same footing. And even if someone has hardships, they can work their way out of them, just like insert name of deified billionaire. Now, the reality of all this is that a small consort of rich pricks have amassed more wealth than ever could be worked for and have a vested interest in all of us finding moral failings amongst each other rather than turning our gaze to the institutions that enrich these assholes. Because once we look at the institutions, we see how these rich bastards manipulated regulations, exploited workers, bribed and paid politicians, and an endless list of horrible shit to get where they are. And that's just the tip of this shitberg. But how can we convey the reality of that to the people eagerly spewing bile at their neighbors? How can we get the working class to stop cannibalizing itself?
I was looking for a microphone to do a mic drop. I've got a remote control. But yeah, the end there is the mic drop. And I think it was particularly applicable to Labor Day and the labor movement and workers' rights and how we're constantly divided against each other with the myth that kill yourself, work hard. If you're 75, go be a Walmart greeter so you can keep your health care instead of, die because you can't get medical coverage for yourself after you've worked a lifetime.
So again, this came from Lehigh Valley Workshop, and most of these are he's got on Instagram. Like I said, he also has a YouTube channel. Not all of his current stuff is over there, but check him out because he's got, and that's not the only one that he has like that. He's got a ton of videos very similar to this, and he's a genius.
I got to go check out his link for more insight, and we'll probably share in the future. So, all right, moving on to the end of the program. One other thing Ed shared with me. Let's bring up this last show note link.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, happy National Hero Day. It's Jerry's favorite holiday.
Well, one of them.
Well,
next to Halloween.
It's one of mine. Yeah, it's one of my favorites too. I made a distinct decision earlier today. I was like, what am I having for dinner? It is Pizza Friday, but it's also National Euro Day. I bit the bullet. I got a euro, Jerry.
Well, one of my best friends since childhood, his father, and he and his brother own one of the best gyros cafes in the city, and we're going to bring up their link. They are sponsors of the program. Steve diligently brings me a gyro sandwich twice a week when I'm here working at home. Nick's Gyros, and I believe they're on Harlem. I mean, I've gone there often. I'm just not remembering the exact street address. Let me bring this up here. Do you see it there as I'm trying to find it on my...
I'll probably have to scroll down.
I got
7216 North Harlem Avenue in Chicago.
Open from 10:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays. 7216 North Harlem Avenue. The best, when I say homemade gyros, they actually pound the meat in the back. They get all of the meat, the lamb, the beef and everything, and they prepare it all there in the back, which is why it's so good. Now, I think I've mentioned this on a previous show. Did you have that image I shared in the Slack? This was my friend Steve's brilliant idea on marketing their store. This is what you're going to see when you enter Nick's Gyros.
It's awesome. Let me zoom in.
It's Uncle Sam endorsed, ladies and gentlemen.
I want you to try the best homemade gyros in America. That's
now,
great.
I think that this was a compromise because originally I think I shared in a previous broadcast when I was talking about Nick's Drive-In that they have a mural on the back wall. It's like a lake with forest around it. And my friend Steve Lakis, this is the Nick's Drive-In is owned by the Lakis family. His original idea was to like have a muralist come into the restaurant and paint George Washington crossing in the boat as he was crossing the Delaware with his men into this mural with George Washington holding a gyros. So as I said, I guess the compromise was this instead on the front.
Well, they got more walls. They could probably paint it on a different wall.
They could. Well, actually, they don't. They've only got one like big mural on the back. But U.S. Patriot approved Nick's Drive-In over on Harlem Avenue. I can't recommend them enough. The food is delicious, and since it's National Gyros Day, or do you say gyros? We don't say gyros.
I only say gyros when I'm trying to be funny. So all the time.
We encourage everybody to go patronize Nick's Drive-In. Great spot, great food, and I can't thank them enough, and my friend Steve for regularly feeding me throughout the week when I haven't eaten or haven't gone grocery shopping. So
yeah, it's vitally important that we continue feeding Jerry.
Definitely, so I don't get hangry, which is hungry and angry.
Yes.
But I think I managed to keep it together tonight despite the technical challenges. Don't you, Ed?
Yeah, I think we're all right for now. Yeah. So yeah, I love a gyro, and so now I kind of want to go to Nick's. Although I had one from a local place that was nearby because I didn't have Nick's near where I live. But my next one is going to be from there for sure.
You should head over. Now you know how I feel at the end of every broadcast where you talk about pizza on a Friday night, and I'm trying to manage my weight and my diet, and you go into pizza and go order from Chicago's Pizza, which is another great place. Because
if you share with Oreo instead of eating the entire pizza, Jerry, then you wouldn't be having this problem. It's all about calorie control.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it's important more than ever to support local business, and especially the local restaurants in your areas. So even if you can't make it to Nick's, but you should make it to Nick's. Support your local restaurants. Because they need help staying in business. I mean, it's rough, just making ends meet for everybody these days. But if you support your local business, what it does is that money goes into the pockets of the people working there, and then they can help. They can also support local business.
Of course.
The echo of the Chicago corner has come to haunt us. But as I was saying, support local business, because what that does is it helps to support people who are working in your local area, and then they are also able to put money back into the economy.
I decided to give it one last try. I had to log into my browser to see if I could take the show out. And of course, 10 o'clock, it works. I'm back in my browser. 10 o'clock, it works.
Now, are you connected through your phone, through your local hardwired internet connection for your Wi-Fi? You're connected through your mobile.
When I was on a moment ago on my mobile phone doing the program with all these challenges, I was Wi-Fi. I just opened up the Chrome, and I did shut down the other windows that had story links in them. So I'm wondering if there was some kind of I don't know, like conflict with coding on a story page, or as we know, ads pop through in videos that may have been competing or conflicting with the video signal coming from my camera here. into my computer that's hardwired to the internet, which is how we normally do the program. So I'm just glad I could, like, once I shut down the story screens, I can come back in here and take us out of the program properly, like I do every Friday night. Hey, Stacy, thanks for joining us. I'm really glad to see you watching, and I hope you join us more often. Arturo also. Art, I didn't quite vanish into the dark realm.
No, but you were close.
I was close.
Yeah, that definitely felt like PIM particles for a second there.
Although now I'm clicking on this to shut this screen down. Okay, that worked. We'll figure this out before next Tuesday, right? Those are my famous last words.
I mean, we can try. I mean, yes, we can.
It's a browser deal. I only have my Chrome open and it's not. Can you click to the intro and outro tab for me?
Yes, I can. But before we do that, I just want to let everybody know that we have a wonderful website, and it is called ChicagoCornerTV.com. And if you head over there, you can find information on our show. You can get links to all the platforms that we stream on, all the social media that we're on, as well as some useful links like things for mutual aid and other stuff like that. There's a link to our brand new merch store on Fourth Wall. And if you can't find us anywhere else for some reason, we will always be streaming all live when we go live on that website as well. So you could watch us straight from the website.
And I'm sure the Chicago Corner website was up, right? And I can't see it.
It's up. And I just took it off the screen.
Okay.
So I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening on Jerry's Friday show. I'll let you take it.
And yeah, thanks. I'm trying to get the intros and outros tab working.
I got it up.
This is a Chrome issue. Ed, 23% memory, 13% in the activity monitor. This shouldn't be happening.
All right. One of these days, we're going to have to go and try and troubleshoot this thing again and nail it down, because we had a bunch of stuff fixed the other week. And then all of a sudden, a couple things it's like one browser.
We've gone almost 2 months without any problems, and tonight it's acting up again. So maybe my storage has got more files on it. I just have to do some what do we call it, maintenance on the hard drive. So anyway, Ed, thanks again for helping hold the fort tonight.
Yeah, I'm happy to help. Come join us again on Tuesday evenings, because I will be back. We will not be at a movie premiere on Tuesday.
Ed will be guiding the show, hopefully with no major tech issues, as I'm dealing with right now. Ed, just do me a favor. Everybody, we'll be back Tuesday. Nothing's operating right here. Ed, why don't you just do our outro? Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Come back next Tuesday when Ed will be handling things probably with better tech issues or no tech issues. And as always, remember, as you go into the weekend, stay safe, watch out for each other, be vigilant, and remember, if it's happening on the streets, you'll hear about it here on Chicago Corner. My browser, notwithstanding, preventing me from sharing more news with you. So stay safe, Chicago.
Don't let me find you out here again.
We're trying to help you.
I don't need help.
What gives you the right? What's the difference between you and me?
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. If you would like to be a guest on Chicago Corner, please email our host, Jerry, at chicagocorner.tv.